For this episode, we are here with Sherre Wilson, our guest. Sherre is a registered dietitian, and we're going to cover a range of health and wellness topics that may help improve your life. Sherre, welcome.
Thank you, Charlie. It's good to be here.
So today we're going to start with some highlights on the who, when, where, and what of Sherre and your career.
Okay.
Let's dig in to start. Where did you grow up?
Well, I grew up in Schatz Ford. I went to Unionville High School. I spent my undergraduate days at Penn State University, and I have a master's from Penn State Great Valley. For the second part of my life, I've lived in the Wayne area.
Nice.
Near King of Prussia.
So to set the stage, tell us a little bit about this difference between a registered dietitian and a nutritionist, because I think we both see as consumers value from both, but
Yes.
break down the sort of the difference.
And there is absolutely value in both. A registered dietitian is required to do 4 years of study, have a bachelor's degree in dietetics or food service or food science type of background. They are required to do at least 1,200 hours of supervised practice and sit for a board certified exam. A nutritionist, on the other hand, is really a person who's extremely knowledgeable in the areas of nutrition, whether that be through their own research or some outside training that's outside of the university setting.
Got it. So as a registered dietitian, you're a click up. Are there registered nutritionists?
No,
Understood.
it's a registered dietitian. Registered dietitians typically will work in a clinical setting, so they're dealing more with medical issues and medical nutrition therapy.
Terrific. And where are you currently practicing?
I am working part-time at Lifetime Athletic in King of Prussia. The registered dietitian is a second career for me. I have always believed that what we put in our bodies makes all the difference in terms of how we look, feel, perform in sports, fight illness. So it's always been a passion of mine. And in the second half of my life, I wanted to do something that really made me feel good about what I was doing. And if I can make a tiny dent in the epidemics that plague this country, it'll make life worthwhile.
I love it. We're going to talk about some of those epidemics, which include like obesity for
Yes.
children as well as adults. But before we get into that in terms of path and how you do it, what are one or two of the, say, food mantras that have guided you?
Well, what I always say to my clients is my philosophy is everything in moderation. I'm not a big fan of deprivation diets or changes that are 180 degrees for the short term. My thinking is let's build healthy habits that are sustainable for the rest of your life.
So everything in moderation
Everything
is one.
in moderation, yes.
That's a foundation. Is there a sibling or anything that goes with that in terms of a mantra?
Well, I like to meet people where they're at, is what I call it. If I'm working with someone who doesn't eat vegetables, for example, they'll say, well, do I need to go buy fresh vegetables? And my response is always, I don't really care what they look like or how they start, just eat your vegetables. So frozen, if you need to have them frozen with a little bit of a sauce on them, just something that gets you started on the path of eating healthier.
So meeting people where they are is so refreshing, because I know when people tune in and will look online or watch the YouTube at home, maybe there's like extreme diets about, meat eating only and veggie only, and then all kinds of ketogenics and other things that look like they're hard to follow and sometimes financially a hurdle, because it's not like the stuff that you might be typically used to buying at just a grocery store. So meeting
Right.
people where they are sounds like it's a way to ease a candidate for health into a pattern of behavior that's better than where they are.
Yes, and then it
Today.
becomes that sustainable way.
Good for you. That's really refreshing.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's dig into some of these topics. I want to start with nutrient depletion in food, because I've read, and I think some of our listeners and viewers have seen as well, that when food travels from California, I think something like 90% of our leafy greens are from the West Coast, Arizona and California. They're in trains and trucks and refrigerated often for multiple days on end, and they make their way to the East Coast. I've seen studies that within 7 days of transit, they lose up to 47% of nutrients. So let's give the science just a break in terms of the actual stats, but assume that some loss happens from the time you cut it to the time it's delivered. What are you seeing in terms of the trends? Like, if we could bring food closer to where people eat, controlled environment agriculture is a way to have indoor farming.
Yes.
Greenhouses, LED lights, all those things. Are you seeing that as a positive trend to potentially help retain nutrients in the food we eat?
Absolutely. I would love to see more farms. I feel like back in the days when I was in high school, farms were going away in favor of houses and things like that. And I would love to see, and I think we're starting to see a little bit of the return of farming. We see a lot of ads for grow local and support local, which I think that's super important, not just for the retention of the nutrients, but for the value and the supporting farmers.
That's right. There's an economic advantage, right? Corporate America gobbled up, I guess, since the 1950s, right? There was a whole family of family farmers, like literally thousands, if not tens of thousands, that are now limited in every state. I know with some of the high tech, I've seen feedback that says, well, it's not the same as a plant that's grown outdoors if it's hydroponic or if it's grown under the LED lights. My take was photon's a photon, right? If you're punching light into a plant to help photosynthesis, it doesn't matter where the photons came from. What's your general take on the trend, though? Are we going to see maybe more adoption of the hydroponic? You've seen in grocery stores lettuce and basil that's grown in water. Basically, indoors, it's controlled.
Yeah.
Is that a positive trend?
I absolutely think it's a positive trend, and I think it's something that people, even with small areas to grow food, can do on their own.
Let's switch to this next type of new food, which is engineered food. So this is seaweed becomes fake bacon, and the Impossible burgers, and the whole family now of synthetics. What's your take on that whole industry?
It depends, and we've talked a little bit about this. You mentioned the Impossible burgers. If you look at the nutrition facts of the Impossible burger, it has about as much saturated fat as ground beef. Maybe even more than lean ground beef. And it's loaded with a lot of preservatives and sodium and things like that are negatives. So I like the idea of finding things that can provide perhaps more nutrition than the alternative, but not if it involves chemicals and just crazy production of things.
So the law of averages is the more you touch something and the human impact on processed foods, the more likelihood you have that there's some accidental byproduct that is either polluting the water or polluting the body, right? Because we've touched it and messed with Mother Nature.
Right.
My philosophy, the mantra is like, keep it simple, stupid, which is whole foods.
Yes.
Like put the things in your body where you can see the source. And someone told me, it was a great line, that Mother Earth has been running experiments for like 100 million years, and the food is actually really well designed. So like, who are we to try and like catch up and figure it out? Now, I don't want to dismiss all of it, but it is a cautionary message that I think you're saying and sharing, which is read the ingredients, make sure you don't get just seduced into something that sounds great.
Yes, absolutely. I'm a big believer that healthy eating is 75% awareness. So read the ingredient lists, look at the nutrition facts label, understand what's in the food that you're eating. Think about trans fats that came out in the 70s. They were like the greatest invention in the world because now we could preserve food forever and make it savory and things we couldn't do before. And 50 years later, they find out it's the worst thing for you.
That's right. The what was it? The margarines and the tastes like butter kind of stuff, or whatever those things were.
Yes.
So it's really, really
margarine is the big thing that sticks out to people, I think.
Well, with the path of food waste, I've seen stats that are over 100 billion pounds of food waste in the United States. So as a dietitian, I would hope that you would think it's a shame to waste good food.
Absolutely.
Because you're in the food game. It's a really tricky balance now because big corporations are producing food. There's paths to the grocery stores where there's loss because of transit, and the outside leaves get brown, so those get thrown away. The grocery stores have food that is past or right at the expiration date, ends up in the dumpster. There's only so many nonprofits that can pick them up, like the food banks. And I've seen a recent statistic that over 30% is actually food waste at home, where it's the bad lettuce in the back of the crisper, just forgotten back there. So any thoughts or tips as you guide, your, I guess are they patients or customers or clients? Clients sounds friendlier, right? Customers.
Yes.
or patients is much more like a medical doctor. tips on how to like use leftovers or engage, in the reduction of food waste to keep it down to some manageable number?
Well, I mentioned that I think healthy eating is about 75% awareness. I think at 15, maybe even 20% is preparedness. So think about your week, plan your meals, and take a look at what's in your crisper and find a recipe for those red peppers or whatever it is that are kind of on their way out. Just keep that in the back of your mind always and kind of do more planning.
It's interesting. I'm a big fan of like the volume shopping, the Costco's of the world, because I like to see the economics, the advantage, right? But you have to really plan, because otherwise, the giant tub of whatever it is that you bought is not going to get eaten. I know from a generational standpoint that preparing food versus the grub hubs or this sort of fast food game with my mother and then my grandmother would be like days that would be turkey tetrazzini and making chili and like creating with Tupperware in the Ziploc, freezer bags. Like it almost looked like astronaut food at the end. I would have stacks as a young like bachelor of food in the freezer. That's one way to make sure that actually instead of waiting till it's about to spoil, you buy the volume and prep the food.
Yes.
And you can store
Freeze
it, for a pretty long time.
Mm-hmm.
Not indefinitely, but pretty long. Okay, so there may be opportunities as we expand on this whole podcast series to look at tips and recipes and things for like bulk food consumption and preparedness, which I think is about healthy but also at your fingertips, microwavable friendly sort of package leftovers that you package.
Right, exactly.
Not packaged from corporate.
Not frozen foods you buy already together, but frozen meals you make.
Correct. Youth. Let's talk about this rising level of obesity and the health crisis, because it is scary to see. COVID woke us up to this. I don't know what you think, but share your insight onto what we can do to help the youth of the world.
Well, a lot of it I think is education. I really wish there were more nutrition classes in middle school and high school. Obesity is a huge problem, Charlie, just like you said. And it isn't genetics. It's screen time, and it's not getting the activity, but also fast food. And when I was in school, sports practices were 4 to 6, and then you came home and you had dinner with a family. Now kids have sports from 6 to 8 and 7 to 9, right. And it's unfortunate because it really forces the family to rely on fast food and just not eating as a family, which is unfortunate. But I think a lot of it goes back to education. Just what do you need to put healthy food in your body?
We'll stay on this schedule for a second, because I know too with travel sports and my kids, I have a 17 and 13-year-old, and I'll tell you, I'm sometimes in a week like a chauffeur, right? Like it's hard to even book meals,
right.
That are together with the group. So I don't know how you pause that, because that train seems to have left the station and it's moving at a great clip, because now the schools want the premier athletes for college, so it's like all of a sudden not as easy just to play along at the school schedule, but it's the travel sports and the layers of after school activities that can conflict with the mealtime. Okay, so let's hope that we could have a structure that might include more family mealtime, but also the meals themselves. Like I held up for it was a talk, an 18-minute sort of TED Talk length presentation to a school, a tube of Pringles, and then a bag of potatoes. Well, it turns out that like less than half of the contents of the tube of Pringles are actually potatoes. There's a bunch of other stuff, and they include like reducing the fiber apparently. So fiber, correct me if I'm wrong, you're the registered dietitian. Does it expand in your stomach to send a signal to your brain that maybe you've had enough chips?
It definitely does. Any kind of carbohydrate like potato chips, even just cookies, things like that, if you pair it with something with fiber or protein, it will slow down digestion to keep you full longer and give you that feeling of satiety.
I'm not a big conspiracy theorist, but I read, and we have to cross-check it, that the Pringles have taken the fiber out of the potato. If you have the same weight of potato and the same weight of Pringles, there's less fiber in the chips. So,
Oh, I'm sure.
so it's actually intentionally sending a signal when they say pop the top and keep.
Can't eat just one.
Can't you see whatever they say? It's interesting. Apparently, salt is also included in a lot of these processed foods. So the enemy of shelf life is water, apparently. So they're pulling some of the moisture out. They're adding some of the salt. They're adding other processed ingredients. But your taste buds then are excited. Your brain is saying, I'm now thirsty. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but the brain has a trigger where it doesn't necessarily know that putting the thing in your mouth as food or drink quenches the thirst, because primitive humans had to get water in sometimes from fruit or even meats. Like there's moisture in food.
Yes.
So your brain is telling you to eat more or put more things in your mouth. Hence you get to the bottom of the tube of the Pringles. There's no fiber to tell you to stop.
Right.
It's like
And you're
crazy.
thirsty.
It's drug dealing, right? I'm not going to, again, point a
It
finger at the makers of something like a chip, but they are not accidental scientific changes they've made to these foods.
No.
Okay.
No.
And the net is kids are fat.
Kids are fat. A lot of the advertising, I mean, you watch American Idol, I think it's American Idol, but they're drinking Coke or Pepsi or whatever it is. All of these shows that kids watch, they have commercials for fast food. And
there's another stat, and we can cross-check these, but the budget for children's food, the Pop-Tarts of the world, the chips, all those things, is apparently something like $100 million a week. So it adds up to like $5 billion a year. Big fun. They're free in America. You can spend money on advertising.
Right.
The entire budget to help reduce childhood obesity and study it is apparently like $100 million for some foundation. That's like 1 week of advertising. It's not even a fair race. It's not like they spend twice as much advertising. So good luck fighting the trend.
Right.
Statistically, since the Second World War, like the kids have gotten just heavier and heavier percentage, wise across the United States. So this is an upbeat podcast series about solutions. So we're just laying on the record that to find the solutions, you got to know the problem.
Right.
So part of this conversation is I'm using you as a cross-check for some of the things I've learned. For the youth, is it just about education, like you said, and trying to focus more on some of those whole foods, or what do they say? If it's coming in a can or a box, it's not as good as if it's coming from the source where you can see the whole food.
Right.
Carrots, celery,
Carrots,
chips
all great.
could be. What's an alternative? Kale chips? Like what can we, if you want a snack, what would be nuts, like a trail mix?
Trail mix is great. Has protein, has a little bit of fat in there to keep you full longer. Hummus, carrots, celery, hummus, apples. You could put some peanut butter on an apple, banana with peanut butter. All of those would be healthier snacks. And things like trail mix you can keep in the car, you can keep in your gym bag, so you're not starving and running and grabbing the first thing that's easy to pop open and eat.
And then the tip for the parents would be, instead of just the default, which is fast and easy, fast food. By the way, it does get expensive. I joked that the value meal, actually, when you add up from a protein and a caloric standpoint relative to buying at a grocery store, like chicken and cooking it, it's actually not great, right? Fast food, it gets really expensive quickly for a family of 4. So some responsibility on the parents to basically, it's kind of work harder and smarter, right? There's no shortcut.
Right,
You
unfortunately.
got to prep some food, have some things ready for the kids in the fridge. If you
It has to
can't
be
make them dinner
important
that
to you.
night.
Right. Something that they could pop in the microwave or.
Okay, we're going to go on to the next one, which is the opposite end of the spectrum in our topic list, anti-aging. So let's leave the kids as a separate conversation. We're not solving it today, but we know we've got some tips out there.
Okay.
Anti-aging, thoughts on what you could eat to prevent, the wrinkles, the weaker skin, the breakdown of bone strength and muscle strength. Yeah, anything you got, bring it on. I'm 56 years old, all ears.
Okay, I'm right there with you. And even in our 30s, we start to lose muscle mass. So protein becomes important as we get older. The recommended amount of protein for most people is about 0.8 to 1 gram per kilogram of body weight. Older adults, over 60, the recommended amount is 1 to 1.2. So we definitely need to bump up the protein. I even say for anybody who's looking to maintain muscle mass or lose body fat, needs to gain muscle.
So back me up on the kilogram though, because if a 10K is 6 miles, like how many, I'm just trying to get the formula. So let's say it's 1 gram of protein per kilogram of body weight. If you were 100 pounds, you would need 60 grams of protein.
Whatever the math is, divide your weight by 2.2. That will give you your weight in kilograms. And then, so first, if it is 60, you would need 60 to about 80 grams of protein a day.
Interesting.
And there's research now that shows we can't absorb, for what it's intended for, large quantities of protein at any one sitting, so it's best to spread it out throughout the day. So if you need 90 grams of protein in a day, it's best to get 30 at breakfast, 30 lunch, 30 dinner, or have some snacks in there that add some protein.
And since we're on the anti-aging, you're saying that as you get older, you need to actually up the percentage, the ratio relative to your body weight of protein.
Yes.
That's
And that will help keep your muscles strong, which helps with balance, which helps with flexibility, and all those other things that we get concerned about as we get older.
And I'm wondering if people lose their appetite. I'm just thinking of the frail the octogenarians of the world. Like, they would probably have to work pretty hard to eat. You were saying it was over 1 or 1.2 grams per kilogram of weight. That's a lift.
It is. And that's where you really need to be eating food that gives you great bang for your buck. Because in addition to lower calorie needs or a lower appetite, if you're consuming 1,200 calories, there's a lot of vitamins and minerals you need to get in 1,000 or 1,200 calories. So there's not a lot of room for crap.
So tips, would it be like, boil up a dozen hard-boiled eggs if you were like, say, 50 my age, and just keep them in the fridge so you can cut them, slice them, throw them on a sandwich, with avocado toast or something. Just like those have protein, right?
Yes. Eggs are a great source of protein. I love eggs because for 60 calories, there's 6 or 7 grams of protein, and they're loaded with vitamins and minerals. So good bang for your buck. I'm a big fan of dairy as well. Greek yogurt. Half a cup of Greek yogurt can.
And what's the Greek difference? It has the probiotic, or share with the group?
It's strained so that it's more concentrated, if that makes sense. It's thicker, I guess, than regular yogurt. And there's some like Icelandic yogurt that's even thicker, more of the consistency of like a sour cream. And those are going to provide more protein just because they're more concentrated.
So I've seen probiotic yogurts like cashew yogurts and all kinds of other things. Is Greek, like, it's not from Greece. It was just like, there is the equivalent. What do we look for if it doesn't say the word Greek on it? You know what I'm saying? Is there a category of yogurt?
I don't believe there is.
Greek became the category.
Yes,
perhaps.
Right.
Interesting.
I would say with the cashew yogurt, and honestly, I don't know this off the top of my head, but I would say look at the amount of protein in the nutrition facts label, because almonds are a source of protein, but almond milk doesn't have any protein in it.
Interesting.
Because
I know
it's so much water.
With the probiotics, the trigger for me came when I was looking at sauerkraut, and apparently if it's preserved or has vinegar, it loses the probiotic benefit. So there was something that caught my attention with the probiotics of like the sauerkraut, that is it's fermentation. It's alive.
Yes.
There's something,
right.
And this is the whole conversation about what?
Gut health.
Gut
microbiome.
Health. The microbiome.
Yeah, that's a whole nother fascinating topic.
Okay, tips for skin health. The protein, it sounds like it's totally you need it. Anything specifically for anti-aging and skin health?
Just really, in my opinion, a healthy, well-rounded diet that provides all the vitamins and minerals. You're going to get a lot of those from fruits and vegetables because they don't provide a lot of calories, but they have a lot of good vitamins and minerals that your body needs to help fight infection, to help, again, keep your skin healthy. But when it comes to skin, hydration is a big thing.
Well, I'm looking back to one of your mantras, which was this sort of everything in moderation. So it's great to hear that you're not saying like, just eat, spinach and seaweed and drink tart cherry juice for skin health. It's like you're basically saying do smart things that are good for your health as well then.
Yes.
As your skin.
Spinach and cherry juice are great, especially cherry juice is great for inflammation, But you also need a variety of, if you ate the same thing every day, you would get the same vitamins and minerals every day. And you need to mix it up a little bit to make sure you're getting all your body needs.
I have heard, and this is anti-aging as well as just general health, that 30 different vegetable types or something that is grown from a plant each week is important, if not each day. It's like hard to pack it all in. But what is that message that I would have seen on the web? Is there something about 30 different types?
I'm not sure about 30, but you may have seen Eat the Rainbow, because there's different phytochemicals in different fruits and vegetables. For example, lycopene in tomatoes is good for eye health. There's anthocyanins in eggplant and red grapes that all have benefits that we're just starting to learn about. So help with breast cancer, help with prostate cancer. There's potential benefits there.
Interesting. I think that Eat the Rainbow may have been part of it, but it was basically a surprise. Like, for example, with the trail mix, you could have a handful of different types of nuts. You could have with a microgreen kit, the arugula and the broccoli and the turnip, like in a salad.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that hard to get to 30. But if you
No.
can imagine, there are probably multiple days on end where someone who's more on that fast food diet, only eating the soft tan stuff, the McNuggets, right?
Mm-hmm.
The chicken sandwich that may be from chicken but loaded with, what is it, the antibiotics, some of the dangerous
Antibiotics, fillers,
scary stuff.
whatever
It's
else they
like
might put in those
mostly
things.
chicken, but not all.
Sort of.
All chicken. Okay, let's go from anti-aging to this idea of healing. So food as medicine.
Mm-hmm.
Big category.
Yeah.
Share your thoughts.
I love this. I get so upset when I talk with clients who say, my cholesterol is 202 and I think I'm just going to take a statin. And I think, all right, let's talk about this for a second. Like, you can reduce your bad cholesterol by eating things like fiber, whole grains, vegetables, whatever is loaded with fiber. You could raise your good cholesterol by eating healthy fats like avocado, olive oil, things like that. I would much rather doctors took that approach before they just started tossing out prescriptions for statins. Same thing with diabetes. I see people who are borderline diabetic and the doctors just put them right on metformin. And I feel like that then gives you this sense of accomplishment, because all of a sudden things are kind of in control with the medication, but the root cause is still not addressed.
Well, how about the scary number that Lipitor is something like the most profitable and the highest selling drug in the history of the world, right? Like, so here it is, reducing cholesterol. Well, how about eat better food, right?
Exactly.
So I'm not going to pick on doctors who took a path to prescribe it, but at some point, they don't have time to study what you've studied as a registered dietitian or even a nutrient expert on any level.
Right.
So as a nutritionist, they would understand that the guidance should be, okay, if the Lipitor is a crutch to get you through a very dire situation where it's gotten high, at some point you've got to probably responsibly guide a patient to get off of it and change their lifestyle. Otherwise, you're just a drug dealer.
Right.
I mean, it's really not a good cycle. And we've seen then a pattern. I think you mentioned it. If your brain tells you, well, I've taken this pill, now I can swing by the Wendy's or the McDonald's.
Right.
That's not great.
My cholesterol just went from 202 to 169, and as long as it's under 200, my doctor's happy, so.
Okay, medicine. Let's talk about heart health with the antioxidants. And I've seen with microgreen, just the baby shoots, and broccoli, tremendous studies, peer-reviewed, all kinds of science. Basically, the veggies can help do things for your heart and your immune system that are surprising to people who would think of veggies as your mom maybe told you to eat more veggies. There's some real pretty powerful science behind it. Share what you know about the antioxidant scene in heart health.
Well, when it comes to heart health, it is a lot of your weight. So the more you weigh, the more difficult it is for your heart to pump blood throughout your body. The more sodium you have from things like processed food, water is going to follow sodium, thicken your blood. That also makes it much harder for the heart to pump blood for your body. So number one, I think with heart health is to maintain or get to and maintain a desirable weight for your body shape. And that can be done through healthy eating with fresh fruits and vegetables and things like that.
I only brought up the antioxidants because I saw that broccoli was so high relative to like some other veggies as a kind of a superfood, along with the arugula and turnips and all, like things that weren't necessarily like just steak, potatoes, and peas on the plate. You know what I'm saying? Is there something to an antioxidant? I don't know how the science of it.
There are antioxidants like vitamin E, vitamin C. We think of those a lot when it comes to immunity. So building up our immune system, antioxidants can help with that, which anything that then enters our system, our bodies begin to fight that because we have a healthy supply of antioxidants. There are things called free radicals. You've probably heard of those. Those are just floating around out there loose, and these antioxidants can actually attach to them and take them out of the body.
So antioxidants have less to do with the heart health and more the immune system. Is that?
That's how
fair?
I think of it.
Okay.
But they do help with weight and things like that that could certainly help.
That's
with
interesting.
heart
So you made a great point, which is if you're heavier than you should be, your heart has to work harder. It's like a little engine. It's a pump, literally a
health.
pump.
It is a pump, right?
So that makes sense that you've strained it to work harder. Now with pulse and the beats per minute, would overweight people have typically a higher resting pulse than someone who's fit?
Yes, most likely yes.
Pump's working harder.
Exactly.
The
All
other
the time.
analogy is the RPM of a car, right? So if the car has to go up the hill or you're accelerating, it's working harder to move that vehicle
Right.
versus on a cruise level.
Yes.
It might be more run. I've seen that the numbers come in like the average for adult might be a 70 to 100 beats per minute. Does that match
Resting?
what? Yeah, resting. Does that match what you've seen or studied?
For
Pulse,
for an overweight person, or
life, average American.
okay, probably. I think it would be a little bit lower, but that could be because I'm thinking more of people who are somewhat athletic.
I know
but
that
70 to 100 is probably
the target for some performance athletes like marathoners is sometimes resting in the mid 30s to mid 40s.
Right.
Is that
right,
getting a nod on that?
Yes.
So I've been trying, and just personal anecdote, to get from the 70s, mid 70s down, and I'm in the lower, say 60s, depending on the day, depending on how the rest is measured, how restful you are, even in the 50s. So it's interesting that the pump we take for granted to work until we have a heart attack, and then doesn't, right? So food as thy medicine goes back to Hippocrates, right? This is a great line from a couple thousand years ago.
Yep.
Before all the pharma companies.
That's what I have at the end of my email.
That's so
Let
great.
food be thy medicine.
Okay, let's talk about this corporate awareness. We've touched on some processed foods and the downside of shopping. Better to shop in the center of the grocery store or on the perimeter?
The perimeter, absolutely.
That's a setup question,
Yeah.
right? So with corporate awareness, like there's no shortage of advertising for all the stuff
In the middle.
in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see a lot of ads just for like potatoes. Maybe
No.
once in a while you see the Idaho Potato Association or the Farmers Co-op. But like the Pringles we touched on, all the stuff in the middle
All the time.
is often advertised.
Yep.
The category of just like chicken, right? Like
Yeah.
cutlets, not as advertised as much as like the chicken, the whatever, the fried or the nuggets in a bag.
In the frozen food section.
Anyway, what do we do? It's like, well, you can't gonna fight, corporate America. Is it about self-reliance or humans? Americans just need to know better? Stay on the perimeter?
Ideally, I guess, because I don't think we're going to get a whole lot of help with the advertising community and corporate awareness, unfortunately.
I know only, again, not to be the sort of the conspiracy theorist, that subsidizing corn came from way back with the U.S. government when farmers needed help. Dust Bowl, coming out of the Second World War, all those things. And we created this giant volume. We are the corn and wheat basket of the world, Midwest. So the corn that is low cost because it's subsidized helps the corporations that buy it to turn it into high fructose corn syrup.
High fructose corn syrup, yep.
Now have like great, tools to put it in all kinds of stuff. Great for them.
Right.
Not so great for us.
Right.
So at what point politically do we raise our hand and be like, hey, let's stop subsidizing the stuff that will poison us? right down the road, because I think there's some stats now about the sugars
Yes.
and the high fructose corn syrup being really bad.
The
Are you
new
seeing that?
buzzword is inflammation, and the idea is that we get inflammation. You cut your finger, it gets inflamed. That can be healthy, but this chronic inflammation that comes from things like processed food, high fructose corn syrup, specifically added sugar, which high fructose corn syrup is a sugar, but all of that stuff creates this chronic inflammation in our body, which now is what they think is the cause of things like diabetes, heart disease, high cholesterol.
Apparently
joint
makes you
pain.
want more too. Apparently, I mean, there's some studies in how, not that it's addictive like a heroin, but like that your body starts to crave it at some level, so you eat the entire pint of ice cream.
Well, and I think there even could be some addiction there. Like, there's studies that light up your brain in areas that light up just like people who are doing heroin and cocaine.
The dopamine or whatever it is.
It has the
in
same
yeah.
effect on you. So I would think that it could be just as addictive, which is scary. I do think there's some, and I won't mention any names, but some fast food restaurants and some coffee shops that people go to all the time, and I think there's something addictive there.
It's really crazy, because we think of like choice, as our sort of our mantra for American freedom, right? We can choose.
Right.
But
Yep.
when you're choosing something over and over again, it does wake me up to think like, I wonder why. It's like, because some of this stuff is crazy expensive. You mentioned a particular, like coffee. Like there's all kinds of stuff they put in the coffee. You can get lots of extras.
For $6.50.
Okay. So again, we have to be careful. We're not picking on everyone
Right,
here. Okay. I want to talk about what is healthy eating. We've touched on it a bunch, but like, is there a way to define healthy eating in your mind as a registered dietitian?
Again, I go back to my everything in moderation. I don't suggest that anybody's not going to ever have birthday cake or pizza or ice cream or something like that. It's more of, again, going back to the planning and preparedness. What does my day look like? And does the evening include a birthday party? Well, maybe I want to get a walk in. Maybe I want to get to the gym today. Maybe I want to, make sure that my breakfast and lunch are a little bit lighter than normal to kind of make room for that. But also in terms of like the healthy fruits and vegetables, like making sure that you get those foods in every day.
80% awareness, a stat you had given me before. 15% preparedness and 5% execution. Love that. The awareness, like, you can't expect to execute if you're not aware, and you certainly can't expect to execute if you're not prepared. So your foundation, it's like you start with the awareness of all the things that you should and shouldn't be doing. Now, if you break the rules, at least you were aware.
Right.
It's okay to eat the cake. You're not going to eat cake every night for dessert, right? Sitting on the
Hopefully
sofa
not.
and fall asleep.
Mm-hmm. I see a lot of people, and I always ask them, have you ever tracked your food? And if they haven't, I will ask them to do that. It doesn't have to get crazy, just maybe 3 typical days during the week, 1 on the weekend. And the first question I'll ask when we get back together is, what did you find out? And people will usually say, gosh, I had no idea such and such had so many calories, or I never realized how much fat was in certain foods. And I like that, people drink coffee. A lot of people drink coffee. They put flavored creamer in their coffee. I don't mess with that. I know that that's something that people enjoy, but I will tell you that there's a possibility that you are consuming 15 to 20 grams of added sugar before 8 a.m. And the American Heart Association suggests that number be less than 25 in a day. So just something to keep in mind.
Share their stats again. So like a teaspoon of sugar is how many?
4 grams.
It's 4 grams. And how many would go in the coffee?
Well, in the flavored creamers that you get, like a vanilla or hazelnut, the serving size is typically 1 tablespoon, and they might have 4 to 5 grams of added sugar. And you might put 2 tablespoons in 1 cup of coffee and have 2 cups of coffee in the morning.
And what's our
Makes
FDA
sense.
or what's the recommendation for the total consumption?
According to the American Heart Association, it's less than 25 grams of added sugar per day. Now, there's natural sugar in milk and there's natural sugar in fruit. Those don't count. Those are processed differently by our body. But it's that added sugar, that cane sugar, the high fructose
So
corn
you're
syrup.
saying in the morning someone could have up to 16 or something. They could be well on their way to reaching the limit for the whole day, over half, just before 9:30 in the morning.
Yes.
Okay. Sugar could be the new fat, meaning in the 70s they talked about low fat, took all the fat out of the food, but they basically, I think, started putting sugar
Yes, and fat isn't
Supplements in.
necessarily bad.
Right.
Fats can be good.
That's going to be part of another whole discussion, which is which fat. Like the avocado is a superfood, has some healthy fats.
Yes, and
versus
fiber.
The fat that's what, the trans fat that is the danger.
Trans
alert.
fat is a big danger, but that technically should be gone from foods. It's been banned.
Right.
But if you read the ingredient list and it says hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated, that means there are some trans fats in it. And the manufacturer can put up to 0.5 grams per serving and still put 0 on the nutrition facts label.
That's really interesting. It's still 0. That because it doesn't feel totally fair, but that's okay. Those are political changes that you and I don't solve. Here's what we can help people with: 3 meals a day. I've heard about 5 micro meals. I've heard about intermittent fasting and just eating 2 or even potentially 1. So break it down for us. What do you feel is the pro and con of just 3 meals versus, say, 5 smaller meals? Start there.
Well, I like 3 meals a day and 2 snacks. So whether that's 5 smaller meal types or 3 meals and 2 snacks, I like that. I'm not a big fan of intermittent fasting. Again, I feel like it's a little bit of deprivation, and I always feel like there's a reason we call it break fast because usually most people haven't had anything for 10 or 12 hours, which is probably enough time to fast.
Sleeping, from 10 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock, you turn off the TV and wake up at
right, and your body recovers, everything kind of rejuvenates overnight, and then you break the fast with the first meal of the day. Especially when it comes to people who are active and they're working out. I love the pre-workout snack of a banana or something small, and then post-workout recovery that includes some protein. So I like snacks around working out. So I'm a fan of the 3 meals and 2 snacks a day.
I love it. We're going to spend more time talking about the pre and post workout in a minute, but this is interesting. The reducing risk of disease through diet we've touched on with like food as thy medicine. So some of it is preventive versus like the fix, where like if it's kind of gotten out of control with the diabetes, I assume that treatments with drugs and other things are almost required because there's a ship that's left that harbor, and there's only so much food can do to fix it. It can help, right? And there's some purists that I've seen all those documentaries on the web about like people that have cured all their cancer with their diet, and it's like at some point you're like, let's take it all with a grain of salt. I know that it is logical that if you eat well through the course of your life and you exercise, that it would just be logical to me that statistically you might have less risk of getting severely sick with diseases that are related to obesity or health.
Yes.
So we can all probably eat better. Okay, macronutrients. What are they?
Well, all food is made up of macronutrients. They are fat, protein, and carbohydrates. So all food is usually a combination of those. Things like oils are all fat, but things like chicken could have mostly protein, but it could also have a little bit of fat. So macronutrients are where we get our energy. So protein and carbs provide 4 grams of energy 4 calories per gram. Fat provides 9 calories per gram. So we get a lot of energy from fats.
Okay, so when I hear about carbohydrates for a post-workout and whole grain, multigrain, brown rice, explain complex carbohydrates relative to simple carbohydrates.
Okay. Well, when you think about a grain, a kernel, it has a bran around the outside. It has a germ, which is kind of like the nucleus of the germ or the kernel, where a lot of vitamins and minerals there. The middle of it is just all this starchy stuff. There's some vitamins in there, but it's a lot of starch. Refined and processed carbohydrates, they remove that bran, they take out the germ, and all you're left with is that starchy, simple sugar.
Is that white bread?
White bread. If the first ingredient is enriched or refined, it means that they've taken it apart and they've put back vitamins and minerals. You lose the ability of your body to naturally absorb the vitamins and minerals in their natural state, and they cannot put back the fiber. So you might get back some B vitamins. You might see enriched, and in parentheses it'll say niacin, riboflavin, and certain B vitamins. But you're better off with the whole grain, which is the complex carbohydrate, because you'll get all of the additional fiber in addition to vitamins and minerals in their natural state.
Is that the same with brown rice versus the white rice?
Well, brown rice is also processed, very heavily processed. It is going to have more fiber than white rice, but it is still processed. I would prefer everybody consume wild rice, but I get that that can take a lot more time to prepare. So given the choice of the 10-minute quick rice, brown or white, I would definitely go with brown for the added fiber.
So how do you cook the wild rice? Why is it much more complicated? You have to let it soak or something?
Well, that's the deal with like the minute rice, is that they've already done something to it through the processing that makes it that much faster to cook.
So I would, taking from this, which is interesting, having been a brown rice guy, now I'm thinking about wild rice, I would wear the mom hat, my dear mother Barbara Cerati, and cook on a Sunday a whole bunch of wild rice. So if that's a longer process, I would make for myself, you see what I'm saying, and the kids, like packs. They could be then eaten over the course of the week.
Yes.
To mimic the benefits of the packaged rice.
Right.
The microwavable friendly
Right,
kind of.
just put them in containers. Sometimes it's all about having the right containers for your needs.
So this goes back to then the awareness, which I just learned, thinking I was doing the right thing with the brown rice, but you said I got like sort of into the red zone, but
You're
not
better.
the end zone, right? But this 15% of preparedness then makes the execution, that final 5%,
Easy.
much easier. Okay.
Much easier.
Look at you, teaching me all this good stuff. Okay, pre and post workout. We've touched on some of the highlights. You talked about maybe a banana before and some protein afterwards. Obviously, staying hydrated, is key for both, right, during the process. But what are some other good things to eat before and after a workout?
Well, your body's first choice for energy is carbohydrates.
Right.
And pre-workout, if you haven't had a meal for a couple of hours, if you work out at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and you had lunch at 12 or 12:30, I would say have a banana or something that's a relatively simple carbohydrate, something your body is going to digest quickly. Some of the trainers at Lifetime will have applesauce or no sugar added applesauce, something that's just going to provide strictly carbohydrates just to give you energy to get you through your workout. Hydrate throughout your workout. I don't necessarily think electrolytes are necessary unless you are working out outside and you're sweating a lot and you're working out for longer than an hour. Otherwise, water is probably fine. But post-workout is a huge opportunity to refuel with liquid that you've lost through the workout, carbohydrates and protein. Having some carbohydrates in your post-workout snack will spike your blood sugar and growth hormone and allow your cells to rapidly absorb whatever else you give it. So the protein, when we work out, we break down our muscles. It's the recovery that helps to build the muscles. So within 30 minutes of a workout, having a protein and carbohydrate snack gives us that quick rush of fuel to start repairing our muscles.
So nut butter, like a peanut butter, or they're actually nut butters, that are mixed, on like a whole wheat or a whole grain bread.
Whole grain bread, you could have.
Throw some banana slices in there too, or something in post, or the banana's better pre?
Bananas are good pre because they are a quick energy source. It's the and they wouldn't be bad to have on top of your toast with the peanut butter.
And then I'm thinking about some drinks. I've heard about apple cider vinegar having some advantages. Any thoughts on pre and post workout with beverages other than water and electrolytes?
I love protein shakes post workout.
Okay.
Again, as long as there's some carbohydrates in there, or you can mix them with a little bit of juice. The apple cider vinegar, to be honest with you, Charlie, I'd have to look into the latest research on that. And that's another thing. As a dietitian, we have an oath to only provide research-based information. And I'm not exactly sure what that is.
I appreciate that.
It's a big thing. You're not the first person to
tart
mention it.
cherry juice is apparently for a post, does something.
Yes, that's
reduces
an anti-inflammatory.
inflammation.
Yes.
Right? So you're
Yes.
trying to get the muscles. Well, you tear the muscle to grow stronger, so you want to prevent the inflammation to accelerate the healing.
Right.
Is that the correct?
Preventing the inflammation will allow you to work just as hard the next day. You won't feel as sore. So tart cherry juice, pomegranate juice, all of those, putting that in with a little bit of protein would be great.
The next thing, and this goes beyond post and pre-workout, but is relevant for all, is blue foods. The blueberries, the eggplants. I found at a Mom's Whole Food. It's like a organic food market. Blue potatoes, like really exotic. Like you can't get them at the Giant and the Acme.
There's like purple
grocery stores.
carrots too.
Yeah, purple carrots. So there's something apparently in the blue and the purple. There's cabbage, purple cabbage. Like what's that?
Those are the
phenomenon? Yeah.
antioxidants, the kind of phytonutrients that we talked about, the anthocyanins. They're I think of them as like extra special vitamins and minerals. They're not like a vitamin C or vitamin B that has a specific function, but they have there's research out there that's looking into their ability to prevent such things as cancer or limit your risk of cancer.
So that's less from the workout, the pre or post. I mean, it can't hurt to eat those things
No, never
after
hurts to
or
eat
the
those
workout or
things.
before. This is all about, I think, your mantra, which is this everything in moderation, which is don't find something that is like apparently the magic thing to drink. It's really a combination
Yes.
and balance. And I want to really leave our listeners and the viewers with this idea of the awareness first, the preparedness second, and the execution.
Yes.
If we can all take away that today, it's learn as much as you can,
Right.
prepare as far out as you can, whether it's a few days or a couple weeks or whatever it happens to be. Keep the stuff in the fridge that's healthy and smart for you to eat, and then execute, on the script.
I like to tell
off we
people,
go.
if you have 5 extra minutes in the grocery store, pick a section. Pick bread, salad dressing, other condiments, yogurt, milks, whatever it is, and compare the nutrition facts labels. You might be surprised at the sodium level in bread, for example, or the amount of added sugar in ketchup or salad dressings, and even things that say light or low fat, chances are they're higher in something else.
Exactly. There's no free lunch, right?
Right, exactly.
Terrific. Sherry, thank you so much for joining us
my pleasure,
today.
Charlie. Thanks for having
And
me.
we will continue this discussion. This won't be the end of our interview, and hopefully ongoing discussions to
Very
learn
cool.
a lot more.
Thank you.
Thank you.